Okay, so today I wanted to do a piece with Copics that kind of had the similar feel to my fairy drawings without there being any fairies in. So I wanted a kind of ethereal feeling without anything magical kind of actually happening. Just kind of trying to capture that with the tones, the colours, basically. So I used my lightbox and Stabilo 0.88, maybe 44. I don't remember what they're called, they'll be in the description, but that's what I used to ink it, so I could have the coloured outlines so they're not as bold as black outlines. They're completely Copic proof, so they're perfect for this. And I'm using the Copic Perfect colouring paper, which is just, it makes everything blend lovely, and it's nice and thick, so yeah, it's good. It's not too expensive, and I think you can get it on Amazon and pretty much anywhere that sells Copics, so that's nice. So I'm colouring in the skin with the Copics, and she's kind of pale. She's a bit more tanned than the past couple of drawings I've done, but still pretty pale. I'm using a few of the purples, the BVs, to shade, just to get the kind of, because they're on the opposite side of the colour wheel, it just kind of gets some depth into the shadows. And as you can see, because it's nice thick paper, I can keep on working on that blending, and it's not going to suddenly stop blending like the thinner papers do. I'm kind of lucky with this because I kind of decided my light source was the top left, and I didn't consider the fact that in the background there was an actual light source to see, and luckily they were in the same place, so that could have went badly, but it didn't. But I inked the background after I'd drawn the girl, so I suppose I could have changed it if I'd have thought of it, but to be honest I didn't realise I'd drawn a light source until it was on the page. But I was just testing kind of what colours to use to shade the hair. I didn't want it to be too dark of a brown. It's always a good idea to keep a scrap piece of paper next to you, the same type of paper that you're colouring on, just to test how different markers blend onto it and how to do anything you want to do, so that you're not going to risk mucking it up on the actual piece. I did sketch this digitally, which was nice because it meant I could, if I'd done something the wrong size or whatever, I could just change the size of it. I didn't have to completely redraw it. And I think for once I'm kind of happy with the proportions. Like, obviously they're not realistic, but they're how I want them to be. I also, because I had the sketch digital, I coloured in the sketch digitally as well, just so I could see what colours I wanted to use for everything, so then I knew what fine liners to use to ink it. I've been really liking sketching digitally recently. I'll probably continue to do that quite often. I'm just using, I think this is E40 and E41, so it's like real pale creamy colours. I just really like the look of this. I love the look of all the kind of like flowy wrinkles I got in the dress. It turned out how I wanted it to. I just drew in a butterfly on her hand. That was in the sketch, I just didn't want to ink it just yet. And then I've just inked in the background as well. So she's like leaning against this big tree. So I'm just getting like a rough base colour down. It's obviously not very flat colour at all, but I didn't particularly care, to be honest. Then I'm just using this darker, more saturated colour to do the bit in the kind of darker places away from the light source. And I'm just blending that together with the original brown and a few greys. I always, when I'm using this paper, colour over a matte because this paper is not bleed proof. It's really thick, so you do have to go over an area a lot of times for the colour to eventually transfer through, but it will happen if you do a lot of blending. And also I'm really good at like just drawing off the page, so I have to get those. And you can just clean up the matte with like a colourless blender. I don't use my Copic one, but I got like a really cheap one that was like £1 from a really cheap shop, and if you just scribble over any of the marks you've made on the matte, they'll just disappear with the colourless blender. I didn't care about making this grass a flat colour at all. This is really just a base colour, and I was going to add texture later on with pencils, so I didn't care about it looking neat. I just wanted a base, really. I felt like there was no point wasting the ink to make it a flat colour when it's about to be covered by colour pencils anyway. I wanted to make the tops of all these hills like lighter, so that they were like slightly illuminated by the moon. Now I'm doing the sky. I've already practiced this on a separate piece of paper, so I know these colours will blend together, which is good because these were the 3 colours that I thought, really, these are the only kind of ones I can use for this. But yeah, it did take a lot of blending because I don't have that many different shades of dark blue, so it was only 3 colours doing quite a range of shades of blue. But with this paper, it wasn't too bad. It worked eventually. It just took a little bit more working than I'm used to, because I normally have the right colours. So now I'm going over it with pencil. Well, going over the grass with pencil. These are the Polychromos, and I'm just using them to add kind of like this painterly effect to the grass, which you can't really see for a while because at the beginning it still looks awful, but eventually it gets better. And I'm just highlighting the tops of the hills again to properly make them look like they're glowing. Just adding a little bit of shading on the mushrooms, toadstools. I'm not sure which they are, but yeah, I'm just adding a little bit more detail onto them. And I finally got some skin tones in the Polychromos, which means I can finally add a bit more depth with the pencils, which is nice, and I think it definitely worked out quite well. Because this is such a smooth paper, the pencils don't really leave much texture at all, which is good because I really don't like the texture coloured pencils leave on paper generally. I find I really like having smooth colour, so texture is just an annoyance because I have to work it harder to get rid of it. But obviously because marker paper is so smooth, there was no issue there. I just use my eraser to lighten things occasionally if I've gone in a bit heavy with the pencils. Now I'm just adding more texture to the hair. I don't like how blended hair done with Copics looks, so I use the Copics as a base colour and then add in more texture with the pencils, because obviously the Copics are alcohol based, so they kind of blend and diffuse and you can't really see kind of like individual strands in it, which is fine, but it's not what I want with hair, so I always go over it with pencil. Now I'm just adding even more texture into that dress. I'm really pleased with how this dress turned out. I was kind of ambitious in the sense that I really wanted it to be flowy and kind of wrinkled and light, and I'd never drawn anything like that before, but it turned out well. And then I'm just colouring in the lacy bits on her shoulders. I did those last because I wanted them to be quite see-through. So I wanted all the colours in the background to show through them, but at the same time you still know that it's meant to be tinted kind of white. Just adding a little more depth into the butterfly and colouring in the moon and then giving a little glow around it as well. Then I used a white polychromo to kind of plan where the stars were going in, kind of give them a little bit of glow around them, but then I went over them with the jelly roll to add the proper white bits. And I also used the jelly roll to do reflections in her eyes and slight highlights on the pearls of her earring and bracelets. So yeah, that's the finished piece. I'm super happy with it, and yeah, thank you for watching.